HyperFast Nation. On this episode of the show, I sat down with an amazing guest. She has had a 30-year career in real estate as an agent, a mortgage broker, a developer, and is now educating women on how to accelerate their wealth building. Please welcome to the show, Ginger Faith. Welcome to the show today, Ginger. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me, Dan. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you today and share your experience and story with our listeners and viewers because it's quite different than most real estate agents, and you do more than just help people buy and sell houses. So we'll get into that. But why don't we start off by just having you introduce yourself to our audience?
Oh, sure. Thanks, Dan. My name is Ginger Faith, and I've been in real estate since 1994. So I started when I was a very young girl, and I have a very antsy mind, and so I like to dive into a lot of different things. So I'm not just a real estate broker. I'm a mortgage broker, and I do other things as well. But I love the real estate game. It's it helps me to grow as a person. It helps me to network with other people and collaborate and make beautiful things happen in many ways. And so that's me in a nutshell. There's a lot more, but that's about, I've been in the business for 30 years.
So 30 years, you've seen a lot of different economic cycles, market cycles, as well as regulatory changes, all which are kind of relevant today. And there's a lot of people that have been in the business for as much as 10 years now that haven't really seen big changes economically and on the regulation side, and now they're seeing big changes on all those areas kind of all at once. So given that you're experienced in seeing these types of changes, what would your advice be to the agents today that have never gone through the regulatory changes or economic cycles that we're seeing right now?
Wow, Dan, that is such an amazing question. That is an excellent question. And I think that my advice depends on the situation. Because the fact of the matter is I do advise a lot of people in various areas of real estate. So whether or not you're an agent, you're an investor, you're in commercial, you're in residential, you're in Airbnbs, there's different advice for everyone, right? It's all segmented because real estate's a very big world. However, paying attention to what's going on around you, paying attention to the regulations, and basically the idea is to stay safe. And I would say collaborating with people who have been around longer than you, and ask questions and be humble enough to really pay attention. Because there are people who have been through cycles before me as well. And so I caught the end of the S&L crisis, and I end up picking up multifamily houses for, major discounts, like 90% discounts. So that's because I caught it on the tail end. But then I was a mortgage broker when 2006 hit, and my income went from zero, like really high, to zero, like flipping a light switch, But then by paying attention and having a service mindset, as well as a self-protection mindset, I turned it around and became a multimillionaire during that time. So but many people lost their homes, livelihood. They were completely devastated during that time. And this could happen again if people are not paying attention and they're not doing the fundamentals, which are focusing on security and your baseline. A lot of people just think the good times are always going to roll and roll and roll, like everybody did in from 2000 to 2006. The good times were rolling. You could just do no wrong. And then from around 2014 till right around 2023, it was basically the same thing. There were a few blips along the way, but you could do no wrong. And so people literally get the idea that, this is always going to be around. They have no concept of how somebody can literally turn the lights off, like just like that, and the party stops. And in certain segments of the real estate world right now, it is happening. And some of my mentors who have bought much bigger scaled commercial real estate are telling me very straight up, Ginger, pay attention to the next couple of years and stay safe, because there are a lot of things on the horizon that could be potentially hurtful to you. So right now, I would say that, being conservative in this business is always an intelligent move. If you're making a ton of money, that's awesome. Don't blow it. Squirrel some away. Pay attention, no matter what you're doing. Pay attention, be conservative. And there's so many ways that you can both do phenomenally well in real estate, and you can totally blow it. One or two deals can totally snow you in when you get cocky, or you think that, nothing will ever happen to you, or, you have the Midas touch. So, is there anything more? I mean, I could go on for an hour on this because it's such a really important question that you brought up. But I would say, think being conservative. Look at your numbers. Look at your bills, your debt ratios, depending on what you're in. If you're an agent, same thing. What is your long-term strategy? Are you just going to be an agent, going one deal to the next, to the next, to the next forever? Because that'll get, a lot of times people get tired of that after a while, after 20 years, the next deal, next deal. What are you doing to secure your retirement? Because you may not have a retirement package or pension if you're not a W-2 employee. So are you buying rentals? Are you buying some Airbnbs? Are you doing something? Are you squirreling away money in a Roth IRA, or another IRA? Are you working with your tax advisor to see what you can do to save and save for the future? So those are some things that just come to the top of the mind as you ask the question.
Oh yeah, no, all great points. I find it interesting that you experienced the changes in how mortgage loan officers are compensated, right? And now we're undergoing changes in how buyer agents are compensated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you began your career kind of when buyer agency started, which back in the early mid 90s, I think, was a pretty big change,
Right,
right? So
right,
when you
right.
were you were entering the industry, right?
Yeah.
Prior to that kind of time period, I think most people had to go through the listing agent, or they had sub agency, and there really wasn't buyer agency. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe around that time frame, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they came up with buyer agency kind of at the request of the Department of Justice and other entities. So was there an impact there, or kind of fear in the industry of when buyer agency arose in the 90s as you were starting your career?
You ask great questions, Dan. That's a great question. The fact of the matter is, I had my salesperson's license in the 90s, but it was only to make some extra money when I bought commercial multifamily real estate. So that was my intention. But of course, I had friends in the business who were agents, and they were talking about basically what was happening was the sellers were holding all the cards, and the buyers didn't feel like they were properly represented. And so some realtors started piping up and saying, you know what, we really need to represent some of these buyers. They're first-time home buyers. If any agent has worked with first-time home buyers, it's super wonderful and fun. I'm working with a couple right now. We've been beat up 5 times in a hot San Francisco market, but we finally got in. And they're, first-time home buyers. I just got a phone call an hour ago about the question about the foundation, and so they have all these questions. They don't know anything about construction. They don't know anything about real estate. So it's really fun, but they really need to be protected. And they weren't being protected in the old system, and so the regulation came to have buyers representation. And I think that was a wonderful move. I really was, because they of all people need anybody. They're not savvy, so they need that. They need someone to hold their hand and to make them feel comfortable. And that helps the market in general. It helps the market to move and flow when a buyer can be walked over into home ownership. It helps the entire economy. And so it was a good move. Honestly, my take on what happened right now, the more I investigate the new legislation, what's taking place because of the lawsuit in the Midwest, I think it's quite ridiculous. The attorney who started this crazy lawsuit was actually an ambulance chaser. He liked to get money for nothing, in my opinion. And he went out and he staged a bunch of mock trials, and he got trumped up evidence to make it look like realtors were the enemy for buyers. And he kept revising and refining his arguments with all these mock trials until he got a place where he had a great enough argument where he got the jury to become emotional. He basically manipulated the entire system, and the National Association of Realtors first thought he was a joke, because basically what he did was stupid. It was a joke. And so they thought he was a joke, but they were caught with their pants down, because they didn't realize that he had been practicing and practicing and practicing and gathering up, supposed information, and they were taking it lightly, and he wasn't. So he went for the jugular. They were caught with their pants down, and he won. And the effect is it's kind of ridiculous, because first of all, now it's caused a train wreck with VA home buyers. what VA can't buy homes now, because the VA prohibits the seller from paying for the buyer, the buyer for paying the agency fees. So that jammed that piece up. And ultimately, it's everything is going to work out okay. I'm confident in that. So, for example, right now I'm working with a couple of buyers, first-time home buyer. Am I going to get paid? Of course I'm going to get paid. I'm not going to represent if I don't get paid. And so basically, we just work it out. Okay, the buyers are paying a down payment, hundreds of thousands of dollars here in California. Closing fees, tens of thousands of dollars. A lot of times they just can't afford another pain on top of that. But here in the Bay Area, these, the sellers are walking away with these huge equity positions because of our crazy market, especially with the inflation with COVID and with the printing of the money. We have this huge buffer. It's gonna end up fleshing out pretty much the same, because otherwise they're not going to get buyers. But it was a nice way for this guy to make a bunch of fanfare, freak everybody out, and make a bunch of money. And now he's going from state to state and try to play this game again. But hopefully now, National Association of Realtors are getting smarter, and they're realizing that they really do have a formidable enemy who's going to attack where he can. And they will get their big guns out, because they have some money, to combat this, because it's pretty much nonsense. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what you said, definitely I think resonates with how a lot of other agents are feeling, and it does present a whole new set of challenges. You mentioned, VA buyers. I think the VA is finalizing some, changes to that rule,
Yep,
thankfully.
exactly.
But
Exactly. They have to.
definitely, probably, causing some hesitation and fear in buyers' minds, and it's already a tough market to buy in. So
Exactly.
it is interesting. Like, I don't think this is going to make home prices come down at all. I don't think
No,
it's going to help with
it has nothing to do with
affordability,
that. It has nothing to do with
and I
it.
don't. And if
Mm-hmm.
anything, it's decreasing transparency in the market. If we're now, if we go from a system where we publish compensation to now we're not, that's less transparency. And I can't think of situations where less transparency is good for the consumer, right?
Right,
Um,
right, right. Yeah, that's a good point. The other
that
point
being,
on, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
Um, yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead and say, what was that?
Well, I was just going to say, that being said, there's obviously a lot of problems with the lawsuit, the settlement, and the
Yes,
effects of it.
yes. You know,
But as a real estate agent, we have to deal with it. What do you think real estate agents should do now, that maybe wasn't as important 3, 4, 5 months ago?
yeah, that's a great question. I would just say communicate, communicate, communicate. What we still have is a free market system. This whole idea of the monopoly, that was just crazy about fixed prices. That was really not accurate. Um, Communicate. So I have a buyer. My buyer wants that house. You have a seller's agent. Same thing. I'm representing my buyer. They're representing their seller, or vice versa. We want this to happen. As agents, as sellers, as buyers, we want this to happen, and we're going to make it happen. So it might be a problem for some first-time home buyers, of course, if, for example, someone comes in and say, "Hey, we're going to pay cash for this house. We're going to pay both sides of we're going to pay the buyer side and the seller side." That may be a problem. But if that's not possible, we are in a free market, and the free market dictates what happens. And so if I have a buyer and they need to pay me through the equity position, then that's my request. And in California, they've created a disclosure, of course, right? Making the request. How much do you want? Hey, seller, you know, here, please give me my commission. And then that's, as part of the package, that's handed over along with the offer. And if the seller wants the deal to go through, they like the offer on the buyer side, then they're going to go with it. And most agents are going to want to have their commission. So we're just going to fill out an extra form, say, this is what we're asking for. We'll talk to the buyers. We'll say, this is what we're charging. And it's just going to be another step, ultimately, because we still want to make deals happen. We still want to have people give people the opportunity to become homeowners, despite this crazy, greedy lawyer throwing a monkey wrench in and really causing a trouble where there was nothing really. This was not a problem. There was no problem here. Everybody was happy. So
Yeah, that's like the interesting part. If you like look at who the actual like plaintiffs were and people that testified, they were all people that signed agreements that outlined, who they were paying and how it would happen, and then they accepted offers from buyers knowing those terms, and then they went to
mhm,
closing with all of this disclosed, and
mhm.
then years later they somehow say they're unhappy and felt duped.
It's somehow because an attorney said, "Hey, how'd you like to make a few bucks?" And
right.
who made the lion's share? He made the lion's share. He made a colossal amount of money. And he's quibbling about 2.5% split between the broker and an agent. The average agent in America makes under $50,000 a year. In California, we make a whopping $84,000 a year as an agent. And this guy made millions of dollars on this lawsuit. So it's more drama that we have to deal with, as agents. And again, this is why I encourage people to invest as often as they can in hard assets, distressed assets if you can. Use forced appreciation to get long-term rentals and things where it can buffer that basic agent salary, salary or commission, which is pretty small for all the work that the agents do.
Well, tell us a little bit more about your real estate business, because I know it's a lot different than the average real estate agent or team leader that we typically talk to.
Yeah, I think that it's really important for a person to check in to their personality. One of the master classes I just finished creating, and I'm going to do a segue to it, is using your own natural genius to find your way in real estate so that you can make money and have a great life and enjoy the process. So some of us are natural builders, some of us are people persons, some of us are system thinkers, and all of these ways you can make money in real estate in all these different ways. With me, I love people and I love working with teams. So what I've done, but I also have a very curious mind. And so I remember in the 90s when I had all these multifamilies, a friend of mine said, "Why are you working so hard? You don't have to." And I think it was just the growth. I think people are in real estate with, we want to grow, we want to learn, we want to test our muscle, test our metal by growing. And this is a perfect area because sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's easy, sometimes we have to put on a happy face when things are going south, right? So my history is I started off with multifamilies in the 90s, and then I moved from Massachusetts to California. I sold all my multifamilies and I got into the mortgage broker business, became a mortgage broker in 2001, a real estate broker in 2005. And I processed and originated over 500 loans during the time between '01 and '06, so '07. And of course, the mortgage meltdown came. And then at that point, I started trying to help clients in any way I could. And ultimately, I started short selling. And then I also started short sell flipping. So I did that for a while. And that was a successful orientation. And I became a more traditional agent for a while, a broker, and helped all of those clients move through the system. What I found, of course, with the short sales is that you could be at a 700 credit score within 6 months of having a short sale. But if you went in foreclosure, you were scarred for 7 years. And so there were clients that I was able to have them dispose of their, upside down house. And then when they stabilized, they got their job, they got their divorce, because everything was crazy. Within a couple of years, I was helping them buying a new home. And that's kind of how my career evolved. I also started buying rentals and building in that time. And so now I have, of course, a portfolio of rentals in California and then a couple of out of state as well. And I have a few Airbnbs, which are really fun. Love Airbnbs. I love the decorating and the whole process of that. So, and then more recently, over the last 4 years, I started on luxury home building. So that was a good foray from flipping properties. I realized that there are certain areas that they'll pay for luxury homes. And so one of my more recent flips, shall we say, we bought a house for $2 million. We basically tore it down, left a couple walls up, built a deeper foundation, and then we raised it to a 2-story beautiful home, went from 1,700 square feet to 3,500 square feet. And we put in about 1.25 million and we sold it for 4.8. So we bought it for 1.5, sold it for 4.8 about a year and a half later. So that's what I'm focusing on now, that and then commercial real estate. I'm just learning, which is, I think, a really good time because we're having a lot of shakeup in the commercial world right now. A lot of problems are coming. A lot of problems are coming due. They're coming up rapidly in a number of areas. And so I'm keeping my eye out for opportunities in the commercial world.
Where were you doing the luxury home building at?
In the heart of Silicon Valley. Like you throw a rock and you hit Google.
Right.
Or Facebook, yeah. So those are why the numbers are really strong. Actually, my area is not. We have luxury homes, but they don't command those prices. A luxury home in my area, which is about 40 minutes away, would be about 2.8 to 3 million. And the numbers can work, but oftentimes it's more challenging. But those numbers help to buffer any irregularities because we were doing that right after COVID while things were escalating. We had supply chain issues and then we sold it, right? So yeah.
How
So
long did that process take on that example you gave, that house you built?
one and a half year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I talk about in my masterclass, and I'm really committed to talking to women about women specifically, but it applies to all of us. How can we compress time and make more in a year to 2 years than we did in the last 10? If we don't think about that, no, people don't normally think about that, but that was like an eye opener for me when I did that first luxury flip. So instead of making 100, 200, 300,000, the team made over $1 million in like a year and a half. So obviously it takes a certain skill set to do that. It's, you can't just, go do that right away. You have to learn how to do that. But there are things that a person can learn if, they say about, um, let's see, 73% of women 55 to 66 have zero in retirement savings.
Mm.
And a lot of times people are starting to worry about that when they get into their 40s. The kids are growing up now. I'm like, wow, I missed the boat. But, saving $100 a month isn't going to get you there. But
Right.
intelligently learning real estate can pop your income. I have a friend who did one deal, and in 2 years she pocketed half of a $4 million split. It was a big deal she did, and she had no real estate experience. She came to me for advice on it. But it can be done. And I think I like to encourage people to think about that if you're kind of late in the game to getting your retirement savings. What can you do in the real estate field? And then that's the focus on my masterclass is different ideas on how to do that.
Yeah, I think just asking that question to yourself, like how can I accelerate 10 years of earning in the next 1 to 2 years? I think just asking that and getting your mind to
Mm-hmm.
think about it makes
Mm-hmm.
it seem like it's possible and real, and you'll try to figure out what you need to do to make that happen, or who you need to talk to make that happen and learn. So I think just asking that question to yourself has
Yes,
tremendous power in it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If you never even think that it's possible or never even think of the concept, how can you go anywhere? Right. It starts first with a thought. And that's why I talk about it a lot, because I want people to start thinking about it. So the two overviews are think fast, think speed, and think big. I always laughed years ago, before everybody hated Donald Trump. He used to say, if you have to think big. And I always said, what in the world is he talking about? What does that mean? And so now I understand it more, because that was a good example, right? That house was a bit think big. I could have worked just as hard in a different area and made a lot less money, right? So if you think big, so my friend I said who walked away with $2 million in about 2 years, she flipped a 56 unit apartment complex, right? Having no experience at all. Now it wasn't easy, but she did it in 2 years instead of like the long road. How long has it
Right.
cost the, so if the average agent makes 50 grand a year, and in California 84,000 a year, how long is it going to take you to make $2 million? And this person had no experience in
24
real
years.
estate. Exactly, right. And this person had no real estate experience, and she just jumped the gun. So it is important, I think, to think bigger and think about how to compress time.
Well, it definitely is clear that you think big. I think another interesting thing is that with 30 years in the real estate industry, um, you're far from doing the same thing, right, for those 30 years. It seems like every 5 to 7 years, or maybe some cases a little bit shorter, you're kind of not, I wouldn't say reinventing yourself, but you're finding a new area to go into, or a new way to change your business. What do
Mm-hmm.
you think is important about figuring out like where you need to go? Because you're making these changes, very, very often. Like
Mm-hmm.
like what questions are you asking yourself, or how are you figuring out, what to go do next?
Right. Well, first of all, I work a lot. Okay, so I'm on the pulse of what's going on. That's really important. Second thing is I do positive affirmations a lot, and I set goals, and I think about what are my values, what do I want to get accomplished, what are my skills, so I'm kind of like a personal development junkie. So I'm very much, I keep a protocol that helps me to move forward. You can't do this and be lazy. This is not a couch sitting kind of game. You got to be active, and you got to be out there talking to people, find out what other people are doing, and make friends. I went to ICSC a month ago, International Community of Shopping Centers, and there were thousands and thousands of people there. It was let's see, 6 million square feet in Las Vegas of people who are involved in shopping centers, only shopping centers. It was amazing. Everything. I mean, you had Subway there, you had Johnny Rockets, you had people who own strip centers all over the country. It was really impressive. But being a part of that, it opens your mind to what's out there, right? So I don't skimp on my education. I invest heavily into my education. And I met a wonderful broker there, and we just hit it off, had a great conversation. And next thing you know, I might be, we're like literally after get up the few, I'm going to be submitting a letter of intent to buy some commercial real estate in his area, because he said, hey, I think this might fit you. And so let's go into that. And so I connected with a developer friend of mine, and we might be building a quick service restaurant in a highly developing area of California. So by just being connected, being aware, setting positive affirmations of what you want, all of those things, there's no one thing. When the mortgage crash happened, I didn't know what to do. There, are you there? Yeah. Okay.
Yep, it cut off for just a second. But...
So when the mortgage crash happened, I didn't know what to do. But what I did know is I would do positive affirmations. That's the only thing I could rely on, because it focused my mind to what I wanted, not what was going on. When my income went to zero, like overnight, I had to figure something else out. And so I started saying, what do I want? and I accomplished everything that I wrote on my goals. But it wasn't easy. I was running on a treadmill at the gym for 45 minutes a day for 6 months. And finally I was able to figure out how to turn that around. So that's the way I did it. The most important thing we have is our mind, and the ability to control our mind when things go sideways. And the market is very dynamic. If you want safety, maybe a W-2 job is a good idea, but those come and go too. But you need to trust the unknown. You have to develop a belief that you need to trust yourself. That came to me in meditation the other day, Ginger. Like, Ginger, you need to learn, make sure you trust yourself. And I think one of the things that any of us can pull from is we've all had examples where we've pulled out from challenging situations, and we've risen because the human spirit is very powerful. And so call on those times where we've had a hard time, and we've risen to the occasion and made it better. And remember to trust ourselves, because the world is very dynamic, and this real estate is very dynamic.
Yeah, no, that's amazing advice. I think where your mind goes, that's where your energy is going to go, and that's how you make things happen, right? Is by focusing on what you want. So great advice. You mentioned a couple times throughout the podcast about a master class. So before we kind of wrap up, can you tell people about your master class, or how they can learn more about that, or find out information on it?
I will. I just finished it, so I will be putting it on my website momentarily, and the masterclass will lead to a deeper dive. But it's a 1 hour, and it'll get people thinking bigger. And the reason for the masterclass is this idea of how can you compress time, use your natural genius to do more in 2 to 5 years than you've done in the past 20 or 10. So that's the basic concept of compressing time that way. So the easiest way, you can reach out to me at womenswealthnetwork.net, www.womenswealthnetwork.net. And all my information, I'm all over social media, Ginger Crystal Faith. So easy to find, Ginger Crystal Faith. You can find me, check me out anywhere. But if you want that masterclass, reach out to me through my website. And that's my educational portal. I have a website for my clients, for my brokerage, but that's my educational portal, because I really do believe in educating people to grow financial sovereignty through real estate.
Amazing. Well, before we wrap up, I always like to do a hyper-fast round. If you are ready for a few rapid-fire questions and answers.
Sounds good.
All right. What is your biggest piece of advice to a new real estate agent?
Invest as soon as you can.
All right.
Invest.
What's a mistake that you see experienced real estate agents making?
Experienced real estate or inexperienced?
Experienced.
Experience. Getting lazy and complacent.
What is one thing you're doing in your business today that you weren't doing a year
ago? Teaching. The Women's Wealth Network is brand new. That's brand new. And the other thing is I had an article picked up by CBS, NBC, Fox, and Yahoo Finance about closing the gender gap, and basically educating women about how to make more money using real estate. And the article got picked up. So I'm learning more about how to connect with major media about the message.
Awesome. What is, or if you had to start all over again and you couldn't take your reputation or your database or your money, and you had to start from scratch in a market where no one knew you, what's the first thing you'd do?
I would see if I could join a BNI group, a Rotary Club. What clubs are out there that connect with what you're passionate about? Not necessarily real estate related, but get out there and meet people and be friendly and connect and see if you can try to do things to help people and get people together. People be a host. I would have people over my home, getting to know people. That's what I would do.
All right, last question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from
now? Owning some strip malls, and being a private money lender to very strategically placed investors where you can get like 15 to 30% of return on investment, with several operators that are really successful, cautious, and ambitious.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. Before we sign off, if you could one more time just tell people how to connect with you, that would be awesome.
Yeah, Ginger Crystal Faith. And my website is www.womenswealthnetwork.net.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Ginger, and to all of our listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. Please share this episode with other real estate agents and investors that you think would benefit from hearing it, and we will see you next time.